Hello everyone, a video that we make every year and that I hope will mean something overall for what all Schwerpunkt means for us all together, all the even more distant reasons that can stem from it. This is naturally a happy holidays video that this year I think it's more important for reasons that maybe we wouldn't like to be there. And naturally, in the last year, we have experienced worldwide. So this is something we can understand fully, in spite of any distance or, aside from any difference, even in the way we have lived the thing altogether, as as a unifying factor, as a common experience, after all. And I can't think of adequate ways of addressing this, which I honestly don't even think it's the case. This year's been a year of sufferance for many, for mostly the reasons stemming from the pandemic itself, which naturally were worsened as pre-existing ones in a broader spectrum. Many people have died, and this is evident, but many people have remained, and naturally the dead have meant, let's say, have passed, but the people who remain have to deal with it, and have to deal with it in ways that go at so many levels. From the first one, there is naturally the affections lost. There is important parts of someone's family, friends that have abandoned us, or naturally simply a life that changes altogether with this. Very young people died as well, unfortunately. Not that this we can't say altogether the usual thing, an older person, yes, maybe it's more right to pass, but let's say every person is different, every reality is different. But thinking of this, that makes you realize the precarity of life in ways that naturally has always been present. People have kept dying for many other reasons, and this is just an addition to that at least it's being brought on the fore enough for making us reflect indirectly. Sometimes it does happen like that. I think naturally of all those who have worked for helping others and that have even lost lives. When I think especially of doctors, of nurses, of all the paramedic personnel, and all the people that have simply done an act of of charity, of grace, and have sacrificed sometimes even their lives at that point, to help those who didn't have the strength or the possibility of making it alone. All those who have donated money or goods or time or resources or whatever to help others in difficulty. Naturally, I think also of all, and this may be cynically also be, but as a consequence, what this morally means of the socio-economical impact of this. Like we can see all over the West a trend that has been going on for a while now. That is the impoverishment of the middle classes, which it's not that a person necessarily deserves because it's part of the middle class more or less than a person that is poor, or sometimes even one that is richer. But naturally, this is historically usually not a good thing, right? When the middle classes go down, I can speak even just as a part of it. Naturally, you can be biased, but things do not work for good. Whereas when middle classes are prospered, there is enough social, let's say, promotion and possibility, opportunities, and so on for those who are more talented, more capable, more qualified to to rise in their condition, well, that's usually a moment in which civilization does well. The rest of the world, like in the last 20 years, I think we have accomplished all together, because we have done this together, and without, of course, specifying the due proportions in the process, we have achieved some of the greatest, if not actually the greatest, accomplishments in the history of mankind. This can't be denied. It's evident, we have created something like 28% of total wealth. Absolute poverty has halved. Like actually last 10 years, not even 20, like from 2010 to 2019, right? In children mortality has decreased by like 1/3. Life expectancy worldwide has increased from something like 3 years, from 69 to 72. Civil rights have been extended importantly. Nations with laws that protect women have increased from like consistently, I think, 1/4, let's say 25%. Death caused by pollution have actually decreased a lot, like by 1/5. The death caused by climate since the 1960s have decreased by have been nullified almost like by 95%. And we have learned also how to not to waste in a way resources we have more effective. I mean, this is also product of partly of the crisis that stemmed from 2008. So altogether, it's not that we're faring necessarily on all things better than before, but altogether by far worldwide. Also, let's say freedom has actually increased importantly by a good 10%. These are all data I give like this, like a kind of a liberal, let's say not in the American, but I would say in the European sense of the word. Naturally, there are lots of things that still do not go well, and I don't think we need to list them, because I think they are in front of our eyes daily, and we do not need to be reminded all the time. Sometimes it's good to focus for a while on also the good things, let alone the fact that the negative ones are surely more important and require more more attention. But if you look at all the data I've given in here, I mean the improvements, and still what, let's say, rose backwards in that sense, you can understand what the problem is. And I hope we are all doing a good job to work, in fact, in the other sense, and to make things better for everybody. But in spite of this, and this is what I usually say in my history videos, that doesn't speak for a progress to be given for granted. This is not happening because of magic. This is happening because someone works, because someone invests in it, because someone consumes resources to hopefully create others. And it's becoming always more difficult to discern altogether whether the overall balance has been worth it or not. These are challenges that historically we never faced with the same, let's say, at least with the sheer magnitude, absolute magnitude of results and effects, right? People could struggle individually way, way, way harder in the past, in ways that fortunately we have largely forgotten in the world. Not completely, and we don't have to forget them, definitely in as a memento, as a reminder that in fact those can be still there, as a to come back at important levels, and we don't have to ruin what we have obtained with so much struggle throughout in the last generations, and that also largely stem from the horrors of world wars, of the authoritarian regimes, dictatorships, totalitarianisms, genocide, and all what you can imagine in this regard. So that is recent history, and it's recent enough for at least people of, I don't know, my generation. I'm pretty pretty young after all. But that I hope will not be forgotten also by those who are much younger, that are coming to know the world right now, maybe are in school, that are, they need a guide, they need someone explaining them, to at least to form their own critical opinion, but also showing them what we know. And it's a difficult task. I spoke many times about the necessity of taking education very seriously, but not in the usual sense that I fundamentally fed up with. That is to say, let's just break with the old rules because old things do not work. No, there are old things that still work and should be importantly reevaluated at some levels. And exactly in education, changing and changing for the better are two different things. And unfortunately, there are many people who just exploit the naivety of those who think that just because time passes, everything has to change just for the sake of it. That's becoming, I will not start to make a rant on economical policies or whatever, but also the quickest way for people to trick others, right? To thinking that, since the future is here, whatever it means, which actually doesn't mean anything, we have to change mind, we have to, get the new thing, we have to break, it was all a lie before. No, what we have done so far is so great exactly because we have capitalized upon things we have built in the past, right? We were not doing well now because some, good guy came out and redrew what existed before. No, it's because somebody that surely had a talent and an understanding and intelligence capitalized upon, as we said before, things that a huge amount, things that we have come with before. And this does come through history, and we see it. And in that regard, especially regarding all the improvements I was talking about before, worldwide, doesn't mean that this improvement will, I repeat it, automatically bring to a better world again, right? Because also, this is, I think, pretty observable in many countries. It can be seen in Europe, but also great emerging nations worldwide. That a very fast growth is not necessarily the formula, the recipe for stability. I count myself from a country that actually was pretty successful considering the historical perspective of it, but that also had its hubris of booming economy at some point, and that we missed something in the between, that if we had grown a bit more slowly but a bit more orderly, surely would make things better today, and we're paying for it. This is true for many other countries. It can be for actually all countries, but since we are definitely witnessing to a major structural growth of many of many countries, but many people altogether. We're talking about the range of hundreds of millions, but actually billions of people. We'll have to be very careful because at some point there are certain, even just demographic dynamics that have to be, in comparison, I don't know, with wealth distribution, for example, have to be very, very seriously checked because major economical cracks can actually occur with dramatic ease, and that optimism of progressivism history actually shows us that doesn't quite is not quite promising, and yet people fall into it quite easily. It's in many ways, at least as far as I'm always believed, to say things in realistic terms. If but even an excessively realistic, everything that ends in ism is not necessarily the answer. Actually, it's dangerous. But let's say we have to be real about what the world is. We have to be objective, and I think that complexively history tells us that improvement comes through a lot of struggle, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of responsibility, of attention, of hard work. Hard work is a very important thing that many people know, of course, in their meaning, but that at the same time, with wealth, with prosperity, sometimes is forgot, and there is a point at which you have restart, and this is the problem of all. This is a mechanism that happens naturally in different with different modalities all the time. But let's say that it's just critical times that usually bring to important qualitative changing, even just in the way you think, and therefore we should be very wary of our current situation, because we have entered the crisis definitely, but at the same time we're a bit disoriented. Our perspective is falsified by the complexity and the diversity sometimes what is happening in the world, so that it's easy to pick a narrative and say and find a lot of data that supports that, but it's way more difficult to actually be realistic about the overall situation, and also being able to read certain data, right? It's not about the information, as we have often said on Schwerpunkt, but rather on the capacity to read that information that matters. Right? History is not made by evidence in the sense that I quote one source and therefore I've done. No, that's just the beginning. That is, you pick that source and you should try to understand what it actually means, which is a wholly different matter than simply quoting it, something that makes you, that just supports your prearranged, let's say your prejudice, let's say, easily. I'm saying this because what we do on Schwerpunkt, I don't know, this year I had a lot of subscriptions. We definitely increased a lot. I got to 2,780, while I think the beginning of last year we were 1,000. So this thing has been growing consistently for reasons that I don't think are important to discuss now, because this is not a channel update video, but that are definitely meaningful, because it seems that there is an interest that is coming from several directions, right? I haven't sponsored the channel. I haven't. I even stopped sharing the content on social networks. So the YouTube thing is working all alone, and this slow but constant increase of subscriptions tells me that, in spite of the formula of the channel, and that is not particularly maybe entertaining, definitely, for 900 videos, maybe almost 3,000 subscribers are not many, but that's just a relation. It doesn't tell about the quality of your care, of your interest, of those who really wanna know more. And there's not even such a dramatic exposure of my contents here. So I feel very blessed and thankful for all what you do here, that I highly treasure for you. As I often said, I don't care. Like, I would do this even if I had just one subscriber, or no, waiting for one, let's say. So I stopped being, when you see the statistics every day, or at least the number of subscribers every day, that's where I basically stopped even to evaluate most of the analytics now. Well, I got used to see just the number rise, and sometimes I say, I don't realize how many people. Just imagine, many of you, of course, do not actually listen to there's just like from 1/10 to 1/20 of the subscribers regularly watch the content. But if it was just for you, like, let's say 130 people on a regular basis, just think of you in a room. And well, that's amazing to me. I would love to actually see you, even if at that point we're almost close to the maximum of people that a human brain can start to recognize individually, which is also an important part of organic, as we've explained, especially at the company level. In military matters, but the question is, it's a lot to me. And therefore I assume that whatever I'm doing here can be of help of some sort, even just a few. And it should be whatever you you feel like, because as I said, it doesn't depend on me. Or better, I of course do the thing, but in Derek, it's you who decides to approach the thing. So I have no power of that. You are doing it all alone, and I thank you for that, because that's something that, as far as at least my personal interests are in this field, you evidently care too for, which it means we have something in common after all. And even if we have different views or opinions, there is still a common direction that is hopefully what it should be, in my opinion, to solve problems together. That is, once we recognize that one thing is important, should be studied, well, then we can discuss about the different opinions and come to a specific, maybe not generally a shared conclusion, but definitely the awareness that there are people with other ideas, and letting us think over them and getting further, because this is in general the improvement that exists, right? As I was saying before, I don't believe in progress strictly meant, but I do believe in an improvement that humans at least search for, right? I don't believe that humans are, history might have gone in really different ways, and we know it at every step of the way, so that what we could be at this point could be radically different, including we could have easily just have wiped ourselves out of the face of the earth already at some point, or at least destroyed most of what we had created. And the fact we arrived at this point is no coincidence, right? I don't like deterministic views of history as well, because those do not work either, honestly, simply as historical interpretations. But there is an evident human interest for bettering their own condition. So today we do not talk about this, how this concretely happens, because there are actually interesting implications even in stating like this. I may be wrong, I don't know. I honestly tell you that ever since I started Schwerpunkt, I got an ever clearer view of history myself, right? Explaining the things I do. I don't know how much I succeed, but it makes me reflect, at least for myself, and most of what I tell you back is the fruit, the result of such a reflection. And I do see a point, right? History does only that. If you think that history, when I was younger, I'm a bit melancholic character, really speaking, and I did like history essentially as most people perhaps, as for I could say identity reasons, but also just liking this thing that happened in the past, being romantic or nostalgic about it, for as a sort of an bittersweet enjoyment from an intellectual point of view. Then you start realizing it's not really that, right? You wonder, because when I was younger, I wondered, is learning history worth it, right? And you may think, well, the more you go on with learning it, the more you get dissatisfied with it, right? There is a lot of pessimism in also certain readings of history. Well, I can tell you that the more I learned, and the more I acquired confidence in mankind, in the capacity of it, and not because I began to think that humanity is better than what it is, but because it's more capable than what it is. And that's something that helps a lot, even when you speak of things that are very, very crude, very raw, such as politics or war, as some may think that's actually the most violent thing, the most dramatic thing. And it's indeed true, at least as far as the concentration of the struggle is concerned. But it's definitely not the worst that can happen to mankind. But I acquired confidence in the positive capacity of humans to understand, right? If you wonder why I speak all these hours on Schwerpunkt, is, as I told you, I really don't like to. I'm not here to convince you to have an idea, to have an opinion, because if I believed that, not only I wouldn't do this, but I probably wouldn't even be. I wouldn't have studied history. I wouldn't do what I do in life, because I would have substantially lost hope that you can individually learn by yourself. Yes, I do believe also in enforced education, in the idea that of course we need literacy as a compulsory thing, that there is in fact a certain component of humanity that must be disciplined the hard way. We need a baton. We do need violence, right? And you think about it, that happens at all levels of society. Like even children that are brought to schools, well, to school, that is forced. That is violence, if you want. They're obliged, and also their parents are obliged. Penalty, even important sanctions and fines and so on, and more sometimes even. So there is both, actually, and that's why it's like swallowing a bitter pill, right? Bitter medicine that you just don't like, but if it's good for you, I think people who love you should enforce them to you in a way. And naturally, at that point, it becomes difficult to like Plato said, who's gonna guard the guardians, essentially, like who's gonna decide ultimately who is good? Ourselves, right? We are provided with this responsibility. We are the ones who have the capacity of making the difference, right? And these holidays, I usually also in the last year, so you see here, I have basically Christmas themes. So I obviously speak. Never told you whether I believe or not in God, but I obviously speak from a Christian background, whatever it is, right? I even though I never actually, let's not descend in details, but I cannot but define myself, at least with a Christian background, if anything, for the place where I raised, the influence that I received, and so on. But I had a very smooth approach with that as well. But there is really something in the humanity of the Christian religion per se, right? That is to say, God becomes man. That I discussed also not last year, but the year before, when videos were couldn't really be listened to, but trying to convey. And in fact, I've inserted here all these pictures. Some of my favorite nativity paintings they're masterpieces of art, of civilization, and this really speak a language that is common to everybody, right? I don't make this video to say, okay, well, this is just for Christians. This is for everybody, because I believe in humanity as a universal value, and this is, I think, what we all believe at this point, historically speaking. It's hard to say that we actually didn't believe it ever since the beginning. Yes, things were more diversified. There was definitely an improvement in the history of of religions, of philosophies, of theologies, etc. That brought to that is largely the reflection also of the improvement of civilization. And naturally, I have my own ideas on this. I actually even studied properly. Like one of my titles includes the strained history of religion. But I do it from as far as I'm from a strictly historical point of view. I do it from a wholly secular perspective, and that's why I speak of these things too. And we also make videos about the history of religions that actually we never inserted like a series on their own, but I think they're very, very important to understand ourselves first and foremost, but definitely other cultures and other perspectives that, of course, are different, but and we're not interested here to define it, but to rather understand them from a historical point of view. That is why it is the case, right? And that answer contains a universal answer, because we're all humans in the same way, right? And we function in the same way. And this is yet another issue that actually we didn't discuss thoroughly on Schwerpunkt, because we prefer to, in fact, stick to mostly uh, basic history or military histories of things that are do not descend into details. But what I was saying is, I do believe in the goodness of humanity as much as in its evil, right? And if we do not recognize both, that's, in my opinion, where we fail to be human. We fail to realize our current condition, because this is something that religions in pre-modern times had actually thoroughly shown, and in here, in fact, there is an astonishing universal understanding, right? There are deep differences, of course, in the systems, but at the same time, much of what we consider like an accomplishment today, or something that are being discovered, which they definitely are scientifically, and we should be extremely happy with that, perfectly match with this broader intelligence and wisdom that we had since millennia, and that turned out to, for those who know both, let's say, the philosophical and the scientific side, that actually, in my opinion, are the same thing altogether, because they mean the same thing etymologically speaking. Just one is Greek, the other is Latin, right? But etymologically, we're talking in many ways of the same thing. We could go as far as many parallelisms as far as even science and religions are concerned, but this is absolutely, maybe this is not important. This is something that we can't speak, we can talk about, even addressing other issues, and not making forced considerations on issues that can. It's not because they can't touch person's sensitivity, or because honestly I don't care much of that. Like, if I have an opinion, I say it, I don't mind, but I do understand that I care for the efficacy of that, how the concept is delivered, and it can't be understood, and there are many ways to reach that, because once again, in my opinion, it's part of all the same channel, right? It's just another way of seeing it, but it's exactly the same thing. So why is it important to accept the good and evil? Because if they didn't exist, but at the same time, we wouldn't know what to do. We wouldn't know what's the better and the worse. We wouldn't be able. We would have already extinguished in a certain sense, because at that point we would have lacked even the reason to pretend. That's why I don't the reason to go on, let's say, altogether, and that's why I always urge you to, as a heartly advice, never to consider history in those terms, right? A person to start considering history through the let's say, not through the paradigm of good and evil. That is actually even a good way of approaching history, in a sense, right? In a Jungian sense, perhaps. We could add the Freudian one, which is important as well. These are also more material way, but let's say that the idea that what happens in history really did make the difference. Well, did make the difference is something that teaches you to evaluate how important it is what you personally do at that point. So, adopting a mentality for which you just say, in block, that was good, right? Even if there was a good, like a 70, 80, 90% of good, if such things could be quantified, which is not easy to do at all. This is what I'm actually trying to say. And the other is evil. Well, that can never be definitive, because in the moment in which you give up, like, you can't be very consistent about it, and therefore having an opinion. But at the same time, you can never be satisfied with that judgment, right? And you exactly know at that point, if you have spotted in that dichotomy that there is always more, exactly because it's such an important difference that you can learn about it, and at that point will not be concerned much about the judgment in itself, which you will surely be aware of, but you will be concerned in actually doing active good by researching more and therefore actually accomplishing, making justice in a way, right? You could get down to this, right? What really matters in this world is, with all the things that do not work at all, with all the horrifying evil, that sometimes comes even through ways that people do not realize they are committing, even just by not doing, by not acting, right? We talked about this. Well, it's a way to damage society in itself, right? Giving up, right? Not saying, okay, well, no, I'm too tired now, I don't care, it's not my thing, it's not where I live, it's not my thing because I didn't actually take part in it. No, there is always this challenge posed, and there are always two tracks, right? And these are things that came up historically, not from so much years ago. There are a few millennia after all. I mean, realizing that there is one thing you can actually do in this world, right? That is going to make the difference in here. Then there is the field, the realm of things we do not know, for which we had to seek an explanation and come up with certain concepts that bring, let's say, a wisdom for us to accept the unavoidable, in many ways, in all the sufferance and all the unspeakable, drama of this journey. But for what we can do on this earth, well, definitely researching, inquiring, right? Whether you're a historian, whether you're a detective, or you are a doctor, well, that is what actually actively makes the world better, because it helps to seek the truth, which we cannot reach by our own means, but definitely we can get closer to, and that will help a lot of people, and that will make the world more just, right? And that requires a constant commitment. If you think that it's just seeking a method, you're just looking for a mechanism, right? But if you don't put moral resources, if you don't put effort, if you don't realize, first of all, that it's very difficult also to apply method, you must practice it, you must adapt it to a reality that is ever changing. Well, at that point, it's as if that thing had no value, right? So always remember, the answer is not technology, right? The answer is not a pre-packed set of information you can simply pass down mechanically to another person. At a level, it works. Think about how mass education works at the end of the day, but we pretty damn well know that it's not enough. And we are realizing it the hard way, exactly starting from these the new generations, because we observe not something like everybody has said in the past, more or less in the same way. Look at how times are going worse, which is just a dialectic that often hides mostly a certain specific interest, whether they're political, whatever. But specifically, we do know that from a structural point of view, we're gonna lose a lot by simply thinking that people will, by expecting that people will make a difference if they're not understanding why that should make it, why it is important to make a difference in the first place. And as humans, as human societies especially, but also in biological individuals, we are built to naturally have this kind of approach. Let's say we, in a young age, we're like sponges that learn everything that reaches our intellectual sphere. Then we start building something on their own, and then we start to struggle in the world. Then we start, structuring and understanding and framing better the information, getting more function. Then eventually, we are meant to pass down this information to others. But it's not so easy at all. Many people fail. Many people are not capable, and we are all falling short of our own expectations in a way. We can't test it every day. We're faulty. If you want, even the concept of original sin comes from. It's not to blame people, to make them insecure, to control them psychologically, say you're not worthy, you need someone that saves you. It's a pretty accurate scientific depiction of all the cognitive problems that we have, all the moral problems that we have, that must be continuously put under inquiry by ourselves in a perspective that at a certain point doesn't have a paradigm, like a point of reference, right? But our own, and that's where true responsibility. There are things that we can't seek the answer from, let's say, another source, because the most important source, if you want, of this answer is ourselves. If we struggle really hard to come up with it, and the good we can do in this sense is potentially infinite, right? So there is no boundary. We do not need a specific, let's say, fundamentalistic point of reference to say, okay, that's only that's just the one I have to stick to. Because if you, in the moment we do that, we fail basically everything we ever believed in, by any point of view, and that's not acceptable for society. It's not acceptable for the challenges that await us. That's not. That's exactly the root of evil, if you want. It's simply saying, no, I don't care. That you lose an enormous opportunity. And of course, to each their own means. I mean, it takes time to get it someplace. We'll come from a different reality. We'll come from a different story, from a different past. We'll find our own way to arrive there. But as we were saying before, we should all be heading, and we are, generally speaking, broadly speaking, towards the same direction. And as long as we realize that, as humans, the better it will be for all of us, right? I'm not saying this to preach or to transform myself into a sort of external point of reference. I'm saying this thing exactly, meaning that you are the only person who can give an answer to yourself and to the world. Right, that's the reinforcing the value of individual responsibility is possibly the single most important practical way of using at this point for improving the world. Right, we have said too much that fundamentally things happen, because it's someone else's fault, right? Not just because they happen for other reasons, which is actually true. I mean, we can't control, unfortunately, many things, as we've seen just this year, or we could have done it, right? But it always passed through, there is so much that can happen theoretically. We can't be covered all the time. But that is not an excuse. That doesn't mean it's like, okay, so, well, let's just don't care. Let's be fatalistic about it. That's the moment in which we lose. Because we can always do better. Right, and even if it was someone else's problem, which most of the time it is, just like even in this case, the question is, what are you going to personally do about it? I mean, somebody did something wrong. What are you actively doing to help? Right, and as I was saying before, it's not that we have to be all scientists or experts or whatever. We do with what we have because the world has its own speed. But at the same time, we cannot fail to recognize that our own potential, the unexploited one, the one that could really cure people, build, produce food, energy, food. It's something that is dramatically overlooked from individuals themselves. Right, and in the broader philosophy in which we raise our children at this point is kind of a, say, okay, well, yes, don't worry, it will be fine, just be nice with others and then do whatever the hell you want. This doesn't sound much of it can be a positive message, of course, but it doesn't make you understand the hard way, because there is no other way but to learn, but the hard one, for real, because otherwise it's just like being kind of saying like, say, okay, well, okay, but don't worry if you fail, right? That's we can't really speak in those terms either, right? It is important if somebody fails. And of course, that doesn't mean that you are a failure in the case you do. That doesn't mean that you should feel worthless because of it, that others should be disappointed at you, especially the people who love you for what you do, because we all fail, right? We all do constantly, right? It's a universal experience. It's part of our existence. But definitely there is a rhythm that we're giving ourselves that puts us under that form of pressure, of exams, of verifications that are needed to be competent for one another. So it's very important for a child to do well in school, right? And that cannot be said, cannot be intended as, okay, well, you're just pressuring the kid. Because if you don't pressure people, they're going to literally be good for nothing, because it's really a biological problem. If you don't get used to a certain capacity over time, which should be an elementary one, given at least the basic education we're given at a level of mass education, you're gonna have problems with yourself for real, right? And you're not going to help others. So you can't shelter yourself. There is a compromise between the two things. You can't shelter yourself because just you fear, because you just don't want to do it. There are always things we must do. And it's not easy to accept it. It's not easy, right? And once again, nobody is exactly. That's why also so much resentment sometimes occurs, because first of all, society is not perfect. Education sucks altogether. People go to school today as always, but considering the complexity of today's world, are completely, most of the time they really do not know anything about the world they live in. They're made believe that maybe that accomplishment is good, but they don't really learn enough. They don't really become capable. They don't really achieve some substantial things they could, even given that the overall, as we've seen at the beginning, the overall social background is improving, at least in terms of opportunity. So that you don't have much of an excuse at that point. But there are also shortcomings of the system in that sense. That is, you can't. You can't ruin children just because you're a bad teacher. You do not care about your job, so on, because that is creating resentment in themselves as well, and they're gonna give up. They're gonna lose confidence in themselves. You're not essentially making them spread wings and accomplish a great deal when they will be adults for everybody, for themselves, and consequently for the others, because doing the best for yourself is the only way, in my opinion, you can actually do better with the others, right? You can't enforce more than much like a social policy just because there is an external, sometimes I can't say imaginary, but impersonal threat that it says, okay, that just because the evil guys, and then you start blaming the individuals that have nothing to do with that, right? There is nothing wrong in being rich. There is nothing wrong in coming from everywhere in the world, or in looking in any way. But unfortunately, there are evil people who are going to exploit that. They're simply going backwards, and those are people that always existed, historically speaking, that fortunately have always been part of the fringes, because evidently, in terms, I don't know if we can even speak of as kind of a properly social evolution, but because it's very artificial and it's not concretely linked just to the biological questions, but indirectly it is largely, human societies realized they were dangerous, and therefore they have been emarginated. But they've been emarginated because they have, not because society is evil altogether. There are people who are emarginated because society is evil, and there are many, right? But we are arriving in a point in history which they can still do their job and to prove that they are worth. Then there are people who just don't care, and those people must be helped, even through fighting against them if necessary, right? With all the most positive weapons, of course, not through a destructive way. And that's also where we need the responsibility. That's why also we talk so much about things like politics and war, not to idealize violence, but to realize that um, showing firmness and stability and authority is a way to to educate. It's a way to responsibilize. It's a way to show people the harshness of life, but for a good reason. If you're able to explain that good reason, then people will become better, right? So I know we live in societies where we just tendentially do not like enforcement as just by name, right? It's not just those things like fuck the police, but it's something close to that, right? It's the idea of any authority that's being constituted it's been a historical process at the same time. It's been a generation. It's partly generational, of course, because young people, generally speaking, are extremistic and violent and kind of anarchic in their nature. But then you should age. Unfortunately, many people do not age, and they keep repeating this kind of idiocies and there are the same people who actually spread fake news that go against evidence, scientific evidence, actual scientific evidence, because also science is a serious thing. You can't take it passively. It's not the substitute of for a religion or something. It's something that you have to make work, and you need brain for that. You can't just believe science without you understanding that, because at that point you could believe just even to a dictatorship, as far as they say it's something scientific. It doesn't work like that. And believe me, I do have a huge admiration, respect for the achievements of the scientific community. I do not have the same for those who exploit what the actual scientific communities, the actual people who spend their entire lives dedicated to research, actually twisted the information for political reasons, for economical reasons. That is a challenge, and unfortunately we often do not see the real face of science, the good one, right? But just a filtered one by people who have interest to exploit it. So that's also, in my opinion, an interesting dialectical way to frame a problem that objectively does distance certain people that believe to be even right, but as most conspiracy theorists actually believe they are, which is not wholly true in my opinion, because I think, okay, well, maybe not most of that. I don't know, honestly. I never thought to calculate certain things. But once again, it's what we were saying before. There's always a good and there's always an evil. Cultivating evidence, this important process of research that the history is, to have a source, to check it, to evaluate the evidence it brings, to have a critical skill. It's a work for good, right? It's a work for goodness, let's say better. And that should be cultivated. Then lots of things, bad things will happen, but still it will have made a difference to understand, to clarify. So to never give anything for granted in that sense. Never anything. But at the same time realize that between the skeptical view, which is healthy up to a certain point, but what you have to do, there is also a bridge that cannot be eliminated. That is, you can even distrust everything, but at that point you should wonder to which purpose, like practically speaking. I mean, making things that are practically important is very important, is fundamental. So in as much you believe, if you have reasons to doubt, it's because you evidently want to know something, and at a certain point in life, reality will force you to make a choice. And it's always going to be imperfect. But at the same time, it's still your choice, which means that it's better or worse than someone else's. And that will have, through that realization, will hopefully make you, do better next time. And that's exactly where the process starts. That's exactly why societies, generally speaking, tend to improve, or at least they're well intentional together to improve. All the divisions that we have, all the misunderstandings, all the hatred, all the antagonism, it comes from evil as a form of ignorance, as a form of failure of that scientific, let's say, historical process, right? and it's not because we're actually against one another, which in part is also how we take decisions, right? Because single thought, first of all, doesn't exist, never exists, and not even totalitarianisms, because you can't enforce that. Every mind is different. Every mind takes its own path, right? And we're meant to confrontate each other. But one thing is doing it, being aware that there can be a dialogue and therefore a compromise, which doesn't mean you have to crush any other view that is different for you, but it's realizing that in order to accomplish something as a civilization, it takes the capacity of negotiation. It can't be a radical struggle to wipe out your adversary, because at that point you lose. Right? There are things, there are of course certain adversaries that are pretty damn dangerous and should be literally even put down. That's why Europe was liberated in the 1940s, right? But it had, in a way, come not specifically to that, but because still there are infinite possibilities the ways it can be dealt with. But that's a pretty good example of how also uniquely uncompromising certain positions are. That's also why we had a Cold War. That's why we had any kind of conflict, telling the truth, going on, right? And there's always a better way to solve things. And it's through this awareness that we can really do better, which is for a channel that speaks about military history, I think it's very important to stress. Because as we often said, we should all know how to fight a war. Because at some point we may find ourselves in that, but this has nothing to do with the necessity of fighting a war. Wars are usually bad ideas. Usually. Not always. Usually though. Right? Which means majority of the time. And there are always options on the table. That's another thing we should always recognize. It is to say wars are not fought because people are evil, but because they're always an option. They're just an instrument, right, in the hands of those who are going to take the decision, right, and assuming themselves the responsibility. But they're usually just the quickest solutions. And sometimes quickest solutions of that kind can be good. They have been good. They keep being good at so many levels. Wars are not just the ones between countries or with armies, etc. Wars are even just police shooting down a terrorist that is threatening to kill innocent people, criminals, and so on. That's the same exact thing. But since most of the times the scale is much larger and the reasons are much more complex, it takes much more time to understand what the better solution is. So the quickest, the rashest solution is usually not good for that reason, but otherwise it's just a meme. And it's from these views that we grow our own responsibility, right? And it can be jarring to speak about war in a happy holidays video, but I presume it's exactly what actually most of even the meaning of a holiday can be. That is not just a serene time, you just eat a lot and stay with your family and buy new stuff, but reflecting objectively what you can do to be a better person. And bad things happen. They do not even stop for the holidays, really. So whatever this may be, just take I always took this time as an important time of reflection, of pause, if you're lucky to have it, and evaluating what truly matters, because that's, as we were saying the other day in the video about the certainty of victory, is really understanding what you fight for that will make you more effective in obtaining what you want. Right? And understanding what you're fighting for means, though, also having that, not being a fanatic, but having exactly that objective understanding, which is often a much more complex and shaded one, that makes you reflect on the same causes what you are doing, and that therefore also redimensions certain positions that can be more profitable, but maybe more reconciling, more effective also at the same time. We could talk a lot about this, but this is just for anybody who was listening, what we mostly discuss in our videos, even when we speak of the fun cricket that very few people watch because they say, "Wow, this is boring. I don't know. There aren't pictures. There are maps, whatever." Doesn't talk about peoples or cultures. Well, it actually does, right? It's actually the most concentrated content about that at the end of the day, because without that guide, you would simply stop thinking that you would simply think that yeah, it's just that circumscribed, enclosed, limited vision. That is exactly what we do not need to do things better, right? That's how I see it. However, uh, I really stop it here with the preaching stuff, and I would truly and sincerely and honestly and deeply and heartily wish you all a great time, right? As I pick it, as most of Westerners in this phase, it's Christmas time, right? It's the new year for even more people, but it can't be any time, right? I do it because it's my time in the year, whatever your time is, right? I wish it as for any day in your life to be serene. I could tell you to be happy, and I wish that because we all wish that. But also we know that as humans we're not even meant to be happy, right? What really makes the thing and makes us happier in a way is to accomplish something. Think about it. What would you have liked to have lived? A life of happiness or a life of accomplishment? And not accomplishment in the toxic, competitivistic, or pressured kind of career seeking, money seeking, all this stuff, but specifically accomplishing something like, I don't know, having a family on your own, raising healthy minded individuals, being an honest person, being a compassionate person, having a responsibility and an authority even in that sense to make something just in your life. That is what I wish you, right? And that will surely bring your own happiness. It is something that belongs to you. I don't have to wish it to you because I'm sure you would accomplish that. I'm sure we would all do it if we only wanted it. And this year, yeah, I think such ideas are, let's say, they have always been important. This pandemic is actually could be much worse and dramatically worse than it's actually been. So it sounds very bad, but yeah, we've been partially even lucky, right? Because if you look at the potentiality of certain viruses that actually already exist, right? I don't know if you ever watched the deer ones, that if those are passed, I mean, we can't even sterilize the thing. It lives on. It should just be literally gunning down people at that point. Well, let's hope such thing never happened. This thing, the COVID is basically SARS, and that also tremendously. This one, it's because it spreads dramatically fast, right? But there are even worse things, and let's hope also we can keep everything under control in terms of mutations, etc. In time for vaccines to make their effect, or for this thing also to end its cycle, because at the end of the day, that's how also things end at a point, which I hope naturally, we all hope naturally, will be as soon as possible and as easy as possible, of course, too. So you haven't transmitted me through the comments or anything. Fortunately, many, and I'm not thinking that you should, but generally speaking, you have seemed to me like all people who have surely their own lives and their own problems, their own satisfactions, their own affections, and that's life, right? But if anything, if any one of you, which we all have in a measure or another, have suffered for what happened in the last times, I can tell you for what it can mean that I heartily sympathize with you. That I would like to shake your hand, uh, and to make you understand. This is what I try to make to you. Not that I have to make you understand because I have to teach it to you or something, but that what we do here is all for you to overcome that, because you will, because we're meant to do. We're meant to go on in spite of the worst things that can happen, and that's what we do here, because we talk about history, and history shows us terrible things, and yet we are still here, right? Many of us haven't made it back in the day, right? And it's continuing to be so. But we have this collective responsibility to show how much we can do and how much we have accomplished. This thing will not bring us down. Things will get better. We will grow better to stop, to contain, to prevent, let's at least this phenomena. We will achieve something as we have done in the past, and we are meant to. We're meant to struggle, right? As every person who leaves knows, it can't be what it means that is pain, means that is to miss someone, to cry, to feel sometimes you want to give up, right? We all know what it means, more or less, right? There are those of us who had it very easy, right? I speak frankly from a position, and I consider myself extremely lucky in my life, and I know many people are not, and for reasons that sometimes make me feel like not guilty, because I don't believe that, I don't know, having more, being luckier altogether is a fault, but that makes me reflect on what I can do if I can to make things better also for those who have less, which doesn't simply work like, I make charity, or I simply, I don't know, my own form can be making this video at some levels, but it goes far beyond that. I think it starts from the mind. It starts from, as we were saying before, being a better person for yourself. If you acquire that confidence, if you acquire that understanding, you can do great things without needing to simply not giving a reason for people to be better, but showing them what's the deal and helping them in that way, because that's, in my opinion, absolutely the best way of doing it, right? So this was my thought. I feel you close to this channel. Otherwise, we have all our own lives, and this is our meeting point, right? And for the rest, I really hope that this is gonna be a great time for you, and that also this new year, of course, I wish you that, not just a happy Christmas, but really a happy 2021, even if it will be hard, right? Surely we're not through the thing, and there will be lots of consequences also we have to cope with, but surely I hope everything will start being better from this very moment for all of us. And even if it won't be, we never give up hope, because that's what really makes us better. We wouldn't wake up in the morning if we didn't have that, if we didn't know that we can do better and be better consequently, and live the life that has been destined to us. So we have power on that to make a difference, and that's the most precious gift that we have together with life, because life is fundamentally about that. We're built like that. We know it's going to be like that. It doesn't matter whether you read it from the Bible or from a scientific article. In a way, we have understood it from so many levels as humans, because that's exactly our humanity that matters at all these levels, and there is no conflict between them unless we really want to see them, right? So to make a long story short, I really wish you the happiest, most serene Christmas and Happy New Year with the people you love and the people who matter to you, and I really hope that what I do here may have brought to any of you that have followed me and had the curiosity to learn, to search for more, that from here, from this channel have gone somewhere else, have started even certain studies that have that I might have helped you without any effort from your side to make you feel better, to make you do better all by yourself, because that's something that stems from you and not from me, but that I may have, vehiculated in a way or not through my videos. So again, I really hope you're gonna have a great time. I will surely make you some. I will not stop making videos. I mean, in the following days, because of Christmas, I will stop like 2 or 3 days. But surely I will wish you happy 2021 more ahead. But for now, just really hope you spend these days the best you can. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Happy Christmas, happy holidays, and have a great time. Bye.